Welcome back to the Impact Space podcast. I'm here with my brother Mumbi, as always. What up, bro?
How's it going, man?
Good, good. And we're so excited today. We have a special guest, Hannah Seabert. How are you?
What's up, guys? I'm good. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. We'll get into just your story, but for all the listeners out there or anybody watching this, Hannah and I met in Portugal a couple years ago now, and at Sporting Portugal's academy, where the men's team has their facilities, and also the women's team was training there. So Hannah was a goalkeeper there for a couple years, and we'll get into all that. Recently just signed with Angel City. Congratulations. Big up.
Thank you.
Yes. We're so excited to watch you stateside. But yeah, somebody that I connected with and instantly we got talking. And I'm happy to say I was able to get you on and just talk about your adventures. When I met you and just talking with you and hearing about your story, I thought this would be real cool to stay connected. So thank you for taking the time, and yeah, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was super fun to connect with you over there overseas, and it's fun to like you meet other Americans abroad and you just kind of instantly connect because I think people who go abroad and have football experiences abroad just kind of have something in common automatically. And so it's something I appreciate about you guys, is that you kind of have that international experience. And with you taking the teams over and doing the camps over there, it's been really cool to see the opportunities that you guys are giving them. And then also, I'm getting like wind of like Moonby has had some international experience too playing, and so I'm curious to hear more about that too.
It's a pleasure to have you, Hannah. And yeah, no, I'd agree. Like every time I've gone abroad and I've connected with Americans, it's been so cool because everyone's path is so unique. And so you hear their stories of how they arrived there. And then also like, all right, well, how has your experience been? You know, people have different ways of navigating life. And so how they're adjusting to the culture of that country and the language and the food and what's their experience been like being far from home and maybe being away from family and friends and just normal routines that now they have to establish and develop new routines. And so, yeah, I've always loved being abroad and running into people. As you said, it's such a cool experience. And I feel like that's a really awesome place to start. But I also do feel like I want to ask you a little bit about how you first got to Orlando.
Oh yeah. I really love sharing this part of my soccer journey, and because I guess it's been quite a few years now since that's happened, and so I think I tend to cover more of the recent events when I'm chatting with people. But yeah, and so I got to Orlando. So I got called into the U23 national team camp directly after my senior season at Pepperdine. And so I played there for 4 years. And
Goalkeeper, by the way, did we mention that? I don't know if we
I don't
did.
know,
That's special. That's important.
goalkeeper.
No, I'm just saying that cause goal. No, listen, nothing against goalies. Please continue. I just want to make
No, it's
sure.
good context. Yes.
Context.
And again, so I had never been part of the national team program before. And so I remember, yeah, I was just super excited. And I just kind of felt, because it was my senior season. And I was entering the draft. And then I finally get a call up and to the 23s. And so I was super excited. I just kind of felt like pieces were falling into place, right? For this, for my dream to play pro. But then also, I would call it more, it wasn't just like a dream, it was just what I was going to do. It wasn't really a question for me. And so it was the week of the draft, and I get called into camp, and it was an interesting experience for me. I never really, I hadn't been in that environment before. And so I'll be honest, I did feel a bit over my head just because the training level and expectations were very high. And it was hard because I was one of two or one of three girls who had never been before. And so everyone else, this was kind of, they had been since they were very young. And so this was just, normal for them. And so it was a difficult week for me in that sense. And then I get called into the draft. or we go to the draft all together, right? All the girls at the camp that were eligible. And we go, and so, I had been in all the projected lists to get drafted that year. And so for me, in my head, it wasn't if I'm going to get drafted, it's just when, which round, right? And so, round one goes, it's all these girls that I'm at the camp with. Round two goes, and I'm like, not getting drafted. I'm not getting called up, right? And then it was funny because, well, funny, I don't know if it's the right word, but my roommate and I were sitting next to each other, and everyone else had gotten called up already. And so, they take everyone back, and me and her are still sitting in the audience waiting for our names. And it gets the fourth round, and yeah, and it finishes, and we just, neither one of us got called. And it was a brutal moment, because it was embarrassing. Because then I go back to camp and everyone else is getting congratulated. And um, yeah, it felt like a very big hit for me. Because at that, for that week, I already kind of felt out of my depth and like I was way out of my comfort zone. And then to have a huge disappointment because, when you're brought up in the American system, there's only one pipeline that you're taught. It's you go to college, you play well, and then you get drafted. And of course, I know that's changing now with girls skipping college and whatever, but at the time, that's what it was. And so I just felt like a huge failure. And I just didn't know, I couldn't see my future anymore. I didn't know what was going to happen. Thankfully, though, and I love how like God orchestrates things because the goalkeeper coach at the camp that year was Lloyd Yaxley. And he called me in at the end of camp and he said, "Hey, we didn't draft a goalkeeper this year. We don't need one. But I really like you. And I think you're really raw. And I think you have a ton of potential. And I would like to work with you." So that's how I ended up getting to Orlando because he was also the Orlando goalkeeper coach. And so I just think it was awesome because, there's, like you were saying, Mundi, like there's different paths for people. And at the time it was hard, but now I can look back and I'm actually really glad I had a little bit of a different path because I like to share this story with other girls and other women who aren't on the typical path as an encouragement because when it's not that picture perfect image, it can be really hard and you can feel judged or maybe not accepted by certain people or the system as a whole. But that's how I ended up starting my pro career. And looking back, I wouldn't have it any other way.
I love that. I love that because a friend of mine that I mention a lot with my brother recently said something about process and how at the beginning, like you may not be that finished product. You may not have all the answers. You may not be performing at the top level, but the point is that you keep trying and you keep pushing through the uncomfortable moments, through the adverse moments. And that's your story, right? Because if you got it 100% of the time, every single time, I mean, you probably wouldn't have much of a story to tell. There's very few of those people in the soccer world or just in the world period where they didn't go through anything difficult. So I think it's something to be proud of, that you've been able to navigate those hard moments. And I'm sure like as it's happening, you're kind of like, oh my God, this sucks. But as you're going through it and as you keep persevering, I'm sure that like each step was just as fulfilling as the last one. Right. And I'm sure that, yeah, I'm sure you were proud of yourself looking back, and also your family and your friends, the people who know you the most, could also be proud of you. So that's awesome. I really love hearing about that.
Yeah, thank you. Go on with it.
I want to. Do you now? Off of that, what happened next? So Orlando, you get called in. Um, Two-part question: what happened next? But then also, I know you weren't in Orlando very long, right?
One season.
And then, what? Right, and then that hurt. You talk about, and you watched the interview we did or the discussion we had with Kellen, and anyone who's been in this situation, like obviously the higher level you go, the bigger, of course, the rewards, but also the bigger the disappointments and the hurts, right? As you put all that into it. So I guess the second part of my question is, how did you deal with that hurt of not getting drafted and that pain and that discomfort, all of that, and then turn that into what you did at Orlando and post Orlando as you continued your pro career.
Yeah, so just to, I guess, lay out my order of events. So yeah, I went in and I did a season with Orlando. I was the third keeper, and so I guess nowadays they're called the national team replacement players. Um, and so I wasn't rostered, but I had an incredible year of training. That's the year that Ashlyn Harris was there, and then Aubrey Bledsoe, who's now Aubrey Kingsbury. And I prospered so much working with Ashlyn and Aubrey and Lloyd as the coach. And I'm so thankful for that because I think it just really showed me, it just showed me that next step, you know. And then of course the field players themselves. That's the year Marta came, and we had Alex Morgan and Eager. We had a bunch of the Matildas, Lana Kennedy, Steph Catley. We had so many like top players. It was a superstar team, honestly. And so it was really cool. And I was just like, wow, what a jump from college and then coming into this, you know? So that was awesome. And then, yeah, end of the year, Lloyd said like, yeah, like you've had a great year of training, but you need to go get playing time. And it's not going to be here, which is totally understandable. Like it's Ashlyn Harris and Aubrey, come on. And so then that's when I went abroad and I went to a team called Fortuna Hjørring in the Danish league in Denmark. And then that's where my European journey started. And yeah, you know, I think the disappointments, they come and they hurt, but then you start to see the good that comes out of where you're at the time. And so yeah, I had all that disappointment post draft and everything, but then I went to Orlando and had honestly one of the best years of my life. You know, it's like I had incredible training, but then I didn't have the responsibility on the field. And so I just got to live life a little bit, which you don't always get as a professional. And I met one of my
Facts.
best friends there, and she was in a similar situation as me. And so um, I just had like, it was just a good year of life. Like I was in soccer, I was training hard, but I got to be a bit more balanced than maybe what you can be sometimes. And so like, I actually really value that time that I had there. And so it's like, you just got to find the good in where you're at. Um, Maybe it's not picture perfect in terms like, yeah, I wasn't playing necessarily, right? And like some people would consider that a failure, but I don't see it like that because then, you know, when I went to Denmark, I actually remember I was really mad on the my first plane ride going over because again, I felt like I had failed because the message that had been passed on to me was that, oh, you didn't cut it in the States. You're not good enough to be in the States. And
Right.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
Europe is the backup plan. And so I just remember being super angry on that plane ride headed over, because I was just taking these feelings of failure and less than, right? Um, but now I kind of laugh at myself, right? Because I was so young and naive at the time, not knowing what I was getting myself into. But I'm so glad that I played 8 seasons over in Europe because I have learned so much about as a player. You know, I've gotten like to play with very many different styles, different nationalities of players. I was coached by different nationalities of coaches. And then also as a person, going abroad and just living in different cultures and interacting with so many things that are new, you're kind of constantly in this zone of discomfort, just a little bit. There's always something back in your mind.
There's
Man,
always something.
you
Yep.
grow a
Yeah.
lot that way. And I think
Yeah.
when you grow as a person, that adds into how you're playing as a player. As my confidence grew as a person and just who I was, I totally knows how that would translate into who I was in the field. And so I think all of those things together, it's just I found the good. And you just kind of ride the wave, right? Like you ride out the storm, see where it takes you, and I can firmly say I wouldn't change it. Even thinking back and like reflecting on those negative feelings I had at the time, I would feel those again if it got me to where I am today.
Hannah, I wanted to jump in real quick on something that you said about, this constant adaptation and learning when you're overseas, right? There's something said, I think, scientifically, that like something about our brains developing by a certain age. I think, is it like 25 that we're like fully developed
Some,
by 25 or something along those lines? And it's funny how living abroad and living abroad beyond the age of 25, which you've done and I've done as well, it's interesting because you feel like you expand that timeline actually, and that you continue to grow and develop at such an interesting and rapid rate because every day you have these new experiences that you wouldn't necessarily have at home. And I think that that's an awesome thing, right? Because you're just constantly growing. Whereas maybe like if you were at home, like maybe you're near your friends, you're near your family, so you're comfortable, things are easier. And like, how cool is it that you get to create a new life somewhere else and develop different connections and just a different understanding of life. And I feel like that's something that more kids actually maybe need. Instead of just being, hey, in this comfort zone, in this system, or in this way of thinking or behaving, you actually get to go somewhere else and try something different. And maybe it's something that actually benefits you in the long run, as it kind of has for you.
yeah, absolutely. I agree with all of that. I think it's not necessarily in the American mindset to go abroad in any sense, right? Not just football, just personal life. Um, but I see the benefits of it so much. And it's funny, I remember, I think it was last summer, I was out talking to a youth team here in my hometown. And I was, supporting the idea of going abroad. I could just see all the parents were like, "Don't tell this to my daughter," They're like, "No, don't let my baby leave."
These are girls getting ready for like college and stuff or
Yeah,
what?
yeah. I forget
Yeah.
exactly what age group they were, but they were high
Mm,
schoolish. Yeah,
mm. And but their parents were like, no, no, no,
they're like,
no,
I
stay
could just see the
close.
looks on their faces. They're like, "Don't send my like baby overseas," and that is something that's fair. Of course, I mean that was hard to be away from my family for so long. It was hard for my family to not have me around for so long, but it was a period of my life, and now I get to come back, and now we get to make up for lost time, I guess.
Yeah, no, about that. So were you how many in your family? Like how many do you have siblings?
Yes, I have an older sister. She's three
Okay.
years older than me, and she's married and has a baby. And so
Okay.
that was hard for me to not be there.
Mm,
She's 2.5,
yeah.
and I'm totally obsessed with her. So like I'm super happy.
Yeah, Auntie Hannah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then it's my both my parents. So
Okay, so so the two of you and you and your sister are close, I'm
yes, we're
guessing.
close, and yeah.
Do you and does she live in where are you
So
now?
I'm in Southern
Like are you
California. I'm from Riverside.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and she was until recently. She just moved up to Boise.
Okay.
Yeah, and so honestly, it's still closer than Europe, and it's not that
Oh,
bad of
yeah.
a flight.
Yeah.
So we'll still visit each other plenty. And my parents, with me moving to LA to be with Angel City, my parents are still gonna be really close, and so it's also something that's cool with the whole story of it's like I leave for so long, and then I knew I
Yeah.
wanted to come back to the States to play, and I could have
Uh-huh.
ended up anywhere, right? But it's kind of
Facts,
a
yeah.
full circle moment where I come back and it's like hometown girl type thing, like type of narrative, and
Yeah.
it couldn't have gone better. Yeah.
I love that. That's so cool. I don't know what your sister does, so this is not to disparage her at all. But I just think, I mean, does she have a little boy or a little
She's a little
girl?
girl. Yeah.
Sorry. That girl has the coolest auntie, right? She's gonna grow up with like, cause all your adventures though, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't know what your sister does, but it's like, and and kids, like, my little boy loves his Uncle Moombi. Like, he just thinks he's the coolest thing. So I think with all your stories, like, and your adventures, like, what a great example, right, for your niece. So I think that's really
Yeah.
cool.
Thanks for saying
That's
that.
really
I
cool.
hope I'm giving her a good example. And I always joke with my
Yeah, like
sister, I'm like, man, as soon as she graduates college, I'm taking her on a backpacking trip through Europe. Or
you'll always be that cool auntie, right? Like, oh my goodness, you did this, you did that. Like, you have that's so. It's beautiful.
Hannah, I wanted to ask you specifically about Denmark. What was one of the? It was that was obviously the first place you went in Europe. Yes. What was one of the most standout experiences you had culturally? So I'm talking just off the field, whether in the street or going places around town. Like, what did you experience, whether it was with your teammates or just with local people? What did you get to see and do over
So
there?
Denmark specifically.
Yeah,
Well, I think the big shock was, so I went to college in Malibu at Pepperdine, and
a beautiful place, by the way.
You really, really struggled there.
yeah. And so, and then I had I actually had an internship with LA Football Club. It was actually the year before they started playing games, and so I was driving into downtown every morning to do my internship. And so I was coming from this like big hustle bustle type of environment. And then I went to Denmark and I went to the tiniest town, guys. Like, I wish you could see how tiny this town was. And so it was just such like a 180 flip. It was very slow paced, there wasn't a ton to do, to be honest. But like I loved it. Like it served its time. I got bored eventually, but it was cool because I went and I just kind of had this like my trainer was always open for individual training, and so like I got to just kind of focus on my craft, which I think was really good to start out with. Um, in terms of like the biggest, I'm trying to think like the biggest culture shock I had there. I'll tell you the story. The Danes know how to celebrate. Let me tell you. Uh,
Oh
with
boy.
me,
Okay.
we won the championship, and it was at our home field. And like, it's such like a precious celebration type of culture, I guess. And so we won. We're celebrating in the locker room. We all get our championship shirts out. We walk out into the parking lot, and you guys know those like trains for like toddlers that will drive around like the mall or like a downtown type of area. Well, they brought there's I don't know why this small town had one, first of all, but they had one. And they brought it out. And then we all got on the train, like on the roof and like inside the cabooses. And it drove us around town, and like all the townspeople were out there celebrating and waving at us. And it was just so
That's
cute.
cool. Wow.
And so I think the beauty of being in a small town is they loved our team and they were super supportive of us. And so when we had our successes, it was kind of like the whole town came out and were cheering us on. And so that was super special. And, um, I'm not going to say that doesn't happen here. That's not what I'm saying. But you don't get this, the sports teams aren't in the small towns here, they're in big cities, right? And so it's natural to have like a lot of support, but it was a bit more of like an intimate and precious type of support. And yeah, that was special.
I love that. The weather must have been kind of a shock, though. I mean, you right?
Yeah, I mean,
Like you go from Southern California to Danish winters.
yeah, I remember so I arrived mid-season, which was January. They're like, yeah, this is the coolest winter in 50 years. I was like, I'm so
Oh
happy to be a part of
no.
it. Um, yeah, and it was extra brutal because we would train at night. And because a lot of the girls, it was more of a young team, and so a lot of the girls were still in school. Yeah, and so
But you train at night, and then I was gonna ask if you had indoor training at all.
we
Like
did not have an indoor field
you
there.
didn't.
Yeah, so we had turf. Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, this might sound dramatic, but there was a couple nights I like cried a little bit because I was so cold.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
That's not no.
Yeah.
It's,
Uh,
I'm guessing you guys were training in like what, like are we talking 10, 15, 20 degrees?
yeah, I mean, shoot, I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, easily
But sub freezing,
sub
yeah.
freezing for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember we would go and shower after training. So the Danish culture, very similar to the Dutch culture. They have a lot of bikes, and so we'd bike to the locker room, and then you could walk or bike over to training, and then we'd bike back to the locker room, and then we'd bike home. And so, and it was all very short distances. but I'd go and I'd shower and I'd wash my hair. By the time I biked home, which was like 5 minutes max, my hair would be absolute icicles. They'd be like clinging against each other.
Well, that's your own problem. Some of us, you know, I'd be
Yeah,
good.
I guess personal
Uh,
problems, but
Personal problems. Those are literally like first world
yeah,
problems.
it is. But it's just,
No,
yeah,
that's
it's
wild
just
though.
me.
Uh, I can picture. That's beautiful that you set it up that way because I can actually picture that setup. Like they outfit everybody with on the team with the bikes, and then you yeah. I guess that leads me. I wanted to ask about sort of just the obvious question is the women's game in the U.S. is growing as well,
Hmm.
right? And in many parts of the world, obviously the NWSL and the U.S. women's national team is seen as top dog or the pinnacle or at least one of, right? And things are starting to. You were in Europe for 8 years. Um, what do you think? Like, what would you say that? What would you? How should I frame this? Like, one, what would you say would be the difference, especially in your first, when you first got there, like Denmark, Norway, and then obviously Portugal? Um, what would you say would be the differences that you felt in terms of how the women's game is followed and the culture around it, especially girls playing youth soccer? Because youth soccer is massive here for girls, we know that, but maybe not. Some people may not know what it's like over there. So, would love your insight on that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because you can't group the Europe game all together. It's different country to
Mm,
country.
mm,
And so I would say Denmark and Norway are fairly similar. They like football there, and there is some support, and it's nice because especially Norway, it's a bit of a richer country, and so they do have good resources for their clubs there. But then going into Portugal, it's almost the opposite of there's not a ton of money, but there's a crazy amount of support because it's just
mm.
that the passion for the game is just stitched into the normal culture, and so it's kind of interesting that they're a bit opposite in those regards. Um, I think it's funny because like those leagues, they all change. Just since I started in Denmark and that was probably 6 years ago. When I left, the league is completely different, and now it's like there's teams that I don't even play against because they were promoted, right? And the top dogs aren't necessarily always the top dogs anymore. And then the one thing that I think is really a big difference is, in European leagues, the top teams tend to stay the top teams, and it's usually the top two, maybe three in some countries. But I think that the thing that I really like about the NWSL is it can rotate every year. And I could be getting this wrong, but I think it was like the year Washington Spirit won. The year before, they had been like totally bottom of the table, I believe. And so I think that's the thing I really enjoy about the women's league here is that there's just freedom to move up and down the table. And I don't see that so much in the European leagues. And you know, in the Portugal, a league, I would say a lot of it's due to resources. With Sporting and Benfica, we just have the resources
Just you
and we
two.
can afford the
Hmm.
players.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a lot of teams there who just do not have the resources, do not have the financial backing to bring in internationals or get a better training facility, right? And so it's a little bit stagnant in that sense. Over there is, yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the in these discussions about how to fix soccer in the U.S. On men's and women's sides, like the discussion about pro rel is often very black or white, right, and very simplistic, of course. And part of it is social media because people just want to shout and not listen and have more nuanced takes.
Hmm.
But what you just said there is sometimes not brought up into the equation. Whereas, like, okay, in American sports cultures and leagues, they're a lot of the times designed for parity because it's like we want a lot of people to compete. We don't really want just this one dynastic team. And if that team so happens to be there, then they have to be really special. Whereas in other places, okay, yes, there's pro rel, which again, I am an advocate for that. Just to be clear on the footballing side of things, I think it's awesome. However, what you get, especially when the resources are not allocated properly, or there's just a big gulf, is sometimes in a league you'll have your outliers, and then you'll have teams that are just they're not going to win, right? Try as they might, and the best they can do is maybe sell off players, and then they'll still maybe finish mid-table, and they're constantly just in this cycle of relegation and promotion, and yeah, that's it. So it's give and take. So yeah, I like that you said that. But it's still, I guess, I don't know. The purist in me, the football purist, romantic, just loves the idea of like, listen, you're getting relegated because you weren't good, and you're gonna have to do something about it. But I don't know.
No, it's funny because I know I said that, but I totally like. I would probably back pro rel as well. It gives you more to play for in the end of season, and if you're in the bottom, there's still something to go for, right?
Mumbi, you played in Spain. You guys were talking a little bit off air about that. Hannah, what was your question, Hannah? Sorry, because I remember I think I cut you guys off. I apologize.
Oh, no stress. Yeah, no, I just wanted to hear about Mumbi's like where he was playing and what his experience was with the international game too.
Yeah, so Spain was a special experience. I got the chance to live in a very unique part of Spain and of the world, I think, the Basque Country. And so the language, obviously the people, very, very unique. I would say that the people are at first maybe, I wouldn't say cold, but it definitely takes time to warm up to people from the outside, right? Like if I'm not just coming and going, right? Like I think there is a fair bit of tourism in the Basque Country because it's so beautiful and there's such amazing food, that, you come in, you come out, and they don't really fuss. But once you start to spend more time there, and you almost feel like, oh, well, I'm becoming like one of them, or I'm becoming part of their culture. And week 1, week 2, difficult. Month 1, difficult. Month 3, people are recognizing me and saying hello, and people are, saying, hey, like, let's watch a game, or let's grab a drink, or let's grab some food, or things like that. And so that was probably one of the most important parts of my experience, was feeling like I was a part of the culture. And when people, even just in the street, when people would find out like, oh, you play for one of the local teams, demeanor changed. The way they spoke to me changed. The way they, treated me changed. And there was a really awesome story where I was on trial. I hadn't even signed a contract with this club. This club's called Real Union, and they were founded in 1915. And they played in the very first La Liga season in 1930 with Barca and Madrid and all the top dogs. So I ended up signing, and I signed for their second team. Still an amazing experience, an amazing season that I had. But I remember I was on trial, and I don't have a permanent residence. I don't have an apartment or anything. And so I'm just staying in some hostels. And there was one in particular I found that I really liked. And I'll never forget this. Like, obviously it's, late spring, almost summer. And so the weather's amazing. It's a great time of year, and people are coming in and staying. And this residence, like, you're really not supposed to stay in a hostel for more than like a week, really, right? Like you're just not supposed to. And so as soon as I told them like, hey, well, I'm here, like I'm working, like I'm on trial, I need a place to stay, because I had to be there for 2-3 months. They said, oh, what do you do? Where are you working? What are you doing? I said, oh, Real Union. And the staff freaked out. And they were like, oh my God, like, don't worry about a thing. Like, if you need a place to stay, we'll have a place to stay. If we have to pull out an extra bed, we will. Like, don't worry. Like, just stay here as long as you need. And I was like, whoa, and so I just remember that, because I really had no place to go. And it was a really humbling experience, because these people looked at me and said, oh, well, let's bring him in, and we'll accommodate him even if we almost have nothing. Like, we'll give him whatever we have left. And so I ended up staying in that hostel for about almost 2 months while I was on trial with this team. And it was an awesome experience. And so, yeah, I feel like I'd echo something my dad said to me, and has said to us growing up, is like, as long as you're, respectful and kind, and you'll always find people to connect with, and I found that to be true there. And so they did me a huge favor because they didn't have to do that, you know. And so while I was training and while I was kind of like in the trenches mentally of, oh, am I going to sign? Am I not? How am I training every single day? Like they took that load off of me so I could just focus on the training bit. So that was really awesome. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that says so much about. I loved being in Portugal. I think it's similar to Spain, and it's just I think it's so cool to play in a culture that is just so like eat, breathe, die football. Man, like it was. I think it's gonna be a highlight of my career whenever I choose to end, and like just hearing that right there, like that's just a great story. I just love how they were just like, yes, we will roll everything out for you and just do your thing. That's super cool.
Yeah, really amazing people when it came down to it, and even just my teammates and the coaching staff. Like obviously understanding that it was a difficult experience for me in a lot of ways because at first, yeah, my situation wasn't that stable, right? And I'm also in a new culture and learning a new language, Spanish, but then also they've got Basque, right? So that's a really hard language that I never figured out, obviously. But yeah, to be met with that kind of empathy was awesome. And then even the team itself, I guess the last thing I'll share is the biggest act of either empathy or kindness or respect that I got was in my last game for the club. I was actually named captain. And so they gave me the armband, and the armband in the Basque country it's the Basque flag. So that for me was like the highest symbol of respect that they gave that to me in my last game. And then that's how they wanted to honor me. And we ended up winning that game, and I got the game winning assist. And so that's how I closed out my story with that club. And they clapped me off the field. And afterwards, they had this really awesome dinner for me at one of the local restaurants. And they gave me the Centennial 100-year jersey. Like it was amazing experience living abroad. You got the chance to play in the UEFA Champions League. How special and unique was that?
Yeah, man, Champions League. It's super cool. I mean, you know what's funny? I'm kind of like a bad football fan. I love to play, but I'm not always watching and stuff. So I didn't necessarily know what Champions League was when I first went over. I probably shouldn't have,
No.
but okay. I don't come from a sport family. Like we're big soccer fans now, but at the time, like I didn't grow up watching sports or anything, and so like that's where I'm coming from. Okay, but let me tell you, I figured it out real quick. Okay,
Yeah, you're gonna learn
yeah,
quick.
and yeah, it was super cool. I mean, because all three teams I played with, I played Champions League, and so I mean, right off the bat when I went to Denmark, we played. And that was back when they were just doing like the elimination rounds. We didn't have group stage and all that in the women's side yet. And so we played Fiorentina, and it was like the home and away. And so that was super cool. We went and played in Florence in their men's stadium, and that was my first big taste of what international football looked like. And then, yeah, in Denmark, that's when they started rolling out like the qualification rounds. And so we went to Greece for a week and played qualities there. And then we played against, there's a Swedish team whose women's side is really good. They're named Häcken, and they're really good quality. And so we played against them. And then most recently, this past year in sporting, it was qualification round. We automatically went into round two. No, sorry, round one. And that was really fun because we went to Iceland. Our first game was against Frankfurt, who has the most Women's Champions League win in history, and we beat them. And it was for sure an underdog story, and so it was pretty epic. So we beat them, and then we beat the Icelandic team there. And then we went on to round two and played against Real Madrid. And yeah, that was like a crazy level of competition. And and so Champions League, it's really special, and you just see like the respect that people give you once you say like, yeah, like we're playing Champions League, and automatically they just know the weight behind that. Um, I think, we've been talking about going abroad and how cool it is and stuff, but then it's nice to get out of the country that you're already playing in and to play against different styles. And I mean, sometimes like you end up playing against girls that you've been watching on TV, or you hear their names thrown around a lot, and so it's just really cool. And I think the growth of Women's Champions League in Europe, it really reflects the power and the potential, because I went to the Women's Champions League final this year because it was hosted in Sporting Stadium in
Was
Lisbon,
that Sporting? Yeah,
and it
yeah.
was sold out, and I believe for the fourth year in a row. And man, it was just epic to see so many people coming out and traveling for their women's teams. I was like, man, like that's what we have in the women's game. And so it was just cool because you don't always receive that on every team, right? We hear about the highs of like, oh, Arsenal sells out Emirates every game or whatever, right? It's not the reality for every team. And so um, to just be able to witness that was super cool. And yeah, just my experiences in Champions League were super special. And I think it was just, it pulls the best out of you. I mean, that's what they say, right? It's the best of the best. And you go into that field, and because it's not teams that you play against normally, or probably you've ever played against, right? There's that little bit of unknown. Like, you got to get out there and you have to feel each other out. You can do whatever you can for scouting, but it's not the team that you played against last season, right? In your domestic league. And so um, I think there's just that much, like a higher level of daring, if you will, of just like an adrenaline rush, and that, I don't want to say, I guess, like the anxiety of the unknown a little bit, and it kind of sharpens your edges.
From playing in those games, what did you learn the most about yourself? Competing against, the best of the best, and arguably the best in Europe, but also some of the best teams and players in the world. What did you learn?
Um, yeah, I learned there's a little bit of a beast inside that doesn't always come out. And, um, like, to get the best out of you, you've got to put yourself in those situations, and you got to play against the best. And I'm a pretty like chill person typically, and um, it's kind of something I've had to learn throughout my entire career, is that who you are as a person is different than who you are as a player. And being in those environments helped me find that different type of player on the field. And yeah, there's just like an intensity level, and I guess this just kind of like raw desire, and like maybe like adrenaline junkie underneath, that's just let's do this. These next 90 minutes, like it's all out. And yeah, I think I had to find that in those types of games. Yeah.
I wanted to add to that too because I was literally thinking that question, but more on the more like technical aspect of playing football, and specifically as a
Hmm.
goalkeeper, because your vantage point of the field is that everything's in front of you, right? And so you talked earlier about different styles and seeing that. So what, in terms of your role within the team, sort of, yeah, you finding that beast, what does that look like, feel like, sound like? How did that translate to the actual goalkeeping side of it? What was the hardest thing to sort of come to grips with as a goalkeeper?
Yeah, I think just pushes you out of your comfort zone more. I had to step up and be a leader more, in the vocal sense, playing higher, um,
Mm.
wanting the ball. And it's those moments that you really realize, like, there is no hiding. If I want to win this game, I'm taking that extra 5 yards higher, or I'm being that much more aggressive in this moment, because I'm not going to let a small margin be it like an error, right? And so it's finding those little bit of extras that you're willing to do. And you know what? Sometimes you have a conscious thought, and you're like, am I willing to do that, or am I too scared? And
Hmm.
you learn a lot about yourself, like on which way you make that decision.
When you say playing higher, by the way, I just want to clarify because I think I know what you mean. But you're talking about out of possession or even in possession, but outside your
Yes,
box to either receive or to stop the counter, right?
exactly.
Okay, it's beautiful. And the reason I want to say it is it's so funny because I see this with some of the kids that I'm around, um, boys and girls, but this hesitancy to step outside of the comfort zone of their keeper area when the ball is in the other half, right? And it's like, hey man, you you gotta step up, like step out. It's okay, like, and it's important. It's actually needed. But I think it's interesting because knowing also the teams like sporting, right? Diving deeper into that culture. Did you notice? What would be the differences between, say, the playing culture that you faced here in the U.S., in Norway, Denmark, and then in sporting in terms of like how your teams wanted to play?
Yeah, I think it's so cool because I think in Europe you use your goalkeeper, as another center back a lot more than how. I mean, I never saw that growing up. You'd hear about like the sweeper
Yeah.
keeper thing, but
Mm.
you were still behind the defense at that point. And so I never played that style until I went to Denmark. My coach there, she sharpened my feet a lot, which I will always be thankful for. And we played with me, and then but that I still felt that was lower on the field. It was still in my comfort zone around the 18, right? And then it was funny because then when I went to Norway, my coach would not let us play with the defense. He's like, no, we are
Yeah,
not
yeah.
passing to the goalkeeper. And I was like, bro, come on, like I can do this. Like,
Mm. It's like I just learned how to do this last
Right.
year.
So they're
Yeah.
different philosophy
it
there.
is, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was much more of a traditional goalkeeping sense there. And but then in Portugal, yeah, the way that Sporting plays, it's like the goalkeeper is part of the defense. I'm on the same line as my center back, and yeah, I'm a pivot point. Sometimes I'm basically the offense sometimes because I'm hitting the long balls, or I'm getting that medium distance chip into my midfielders or whatever it may be. But yeah, and something that I'm really glad has been added to the game here stateside. I start to see goalkeepers doing that more. I was watching the Waves, San Diego Waves play, and Kayleen Sheridan does a really good job of this. And I love how her team, they just kind of seem like a very cohesive unit. And I love seeing that because I think that's, if we're not doing that, it's kind of a waste of a player. It's a point I made to them. I was like, look, this is how I like to play, and I don't want to lose that. And so that's something that was nice with Angel City. They're like, that's what we're working towards also. And so it's just nice to see like their open mindedness. And I know they already do. It's not like it's brand new for them. That's not what I'm saying. But yeah, so yeah, it's a big thing, and I think
Yeah.
it's something goalkeepers, you know, I will also credit my confidence with my feet also comes from I played on the field a decent amount growing up as well, and I think that's very helpful. And so sometimes I do like to tell goalkeepers like maintain your field skills, not just like with your feet, but go in, be a center midfielder, get
Yeah.
comfortable with someone on your back because sometimes I have someone on my back, you know.
Yeah, so it's important that we don't lose sight of the fact that, of course, the goalkeeper's number one rule, based on their location on the field and because of the tools that they have and the gloves that they wear, is to keep the ball out of the net. Right? We know this, and it's just interesting because there are so many people who are moving or who think or feel that that conversation has shifted a lot, which is like, oh, and it's shifted too far in some people's eyes, which is like, oh, the first thing you hear about a goalkeeper is how good their feet are. Well, that's not important. And on the one hand, I empathize with that a little bit, like because people can take it too far, but I think you said it right, which is like, at the end of the day, you are on the field, and if you're not using this player to help the team build in some situations or to stop counterattacks higher up the field, then yeah, it's a waste of a player. It's a waste of a human body to be there to be like, oh no, but you're really restricted. And I don't think enough is said about the transition that the game has made to include the keeper as an extra, as an attacker. Because many people don't know this, right? Especially the younger people listening to this, maybe, there was a rule change in 1992, right? That pass back rule change came not too long ago, right? Yeah, 92, like that's not long ago. Before then, your team could pass back to the keeper, to your own keeper, and they could pick it up, right? But when you make that rule change, it really changes the game, right? It really changes the game because now everything is different, right? Pressing, teams will press different because the keeper has to play with their feet. And of course, then keepers are incentivized to have a wider skill set. So, no, that's cool to hear that reflected in that. Because obviously, for the folks who don't know, Hannah and I can't say we go way back, but it's cool because we met and we talked for a couple of years while I took a team to Sporting Portugal for a few days, and as we would run into each other, I did see you train. I have seen you train. I've seen a. I didn't see. I can't say I saw the beast come out because in the training sessions that I saw, y'all really weren't doing any like. I think I saw like a couple regen
Yeah,
days
probably.
basically, and you were like keepers were separate and you were doing things. So I will say this, and I'm not just saying this because you're in, but like when I spoke with the coaches about you, and they all spoke very highly of you, I think that speaks to your character, but your professionalism and all that. So that was really cool. And yeah, just seeing you in person was cool. But I guess long-winded question. Yeah, just say more about that. Like, what was that like? Was it like living in Lisbon? And yeah, then just Portugal.
Yeah, man, I was there for 3.5 years, and it was an incredible experience. You know, one of my goals for my career, people would always ask, like, what do you want to do? Is there a certain team you want to play for, a certain league? And, I didn't necessarily have specific names in mind, but I knew I wanted to play for a club whose name was recognized anywhere. And I feel like I really got that with Sporting. And I just think there's something really unique about being a player on a club that has so much history and so much like expectation and passion and drive behind it. And yeah, I really got to experience that there, and it was really cool. I understood, like, I don't think I'd ever really like worn like a crest, right? And been like, man, I gotta represent this crest. But there is expectations with that, like being in Sporting, and so I think that was like, it's a privilege to have that responsibility. And so, yeah, I think, I mean, I loved Portugal in general. I mean, it's a gorgeous country. Like Lisbon is like a super lively city, and it's just gorgeous. There's a lot going on, and it's close to the beaches. And I had a really good life in Portugal. It was tough to leave because I had community and roots there. I'd gotten involved with, I found an expat church there, and so I found a lot of like English speakers from all around the world, and it was good for me to have community outside of football there. And so that was pretty key to just have balance in life and going international. You don't always get that. You don't have that like built in like friends from college or high school that are around or whatever. And so you're starting from scratch. And so that was super key for me. And yeah, I think it was just cool because so look, I don't want it to get twisted. What I'm about to say, this isn't why we play, but it was a unique experience that I hadn't experienced yet. It was really cool to sometimes get recognized, and I hadn't had that before. And sometimes I'd be walking, like I'd be in the subway, or I'd be down the street, and somebody'd be like, "Seabert," and I'm like, "What? Like, how do you know me?" Like, and it was just cool because it just showed that people were watching our games,
Yeah.
and I think
That's
that's really
awesome.
cool because sometimes, especially as a woman's side, you don't always feel like it. You don't always feel like you're the prime show or whatever. Um, and I think that one drawback is because of the location of our home field, the women's field. It's really difficult for locals to get to. And
Yeah.
so in person, we didn't feel like people were watching, but on TV, I think a lot more people were watching. Um, and also experiencing the derbies. So Sporting versus Benfica is intense there. Um, and it was super cool. I wish you would have been able to see one of those games. Did you ever catch one?
I know. I was bummed because it didn't work out any of the times. But I was gonna ask, when you played away at Benfica, where would those games be? Would those be at the Estadio de Luz?
Yes. More often
Wow.
than not, we were in their men's stadium.
Yeah, which is massive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then how? But then you'd get like, what's the? How big of a crowd would you get there?
Yeah. So it was really cool. So the first time I played against Benfica, we played in Stadio de Luz, and we got the record at the time. It's beaten now, but at the time it was the record for attendance at a women's game, and it was like over 27,000,
Okay,
which was really awesome. Um,
that's really cool.
and it was really cool because we beat them for the first time in a while, one
Vamos.
zero, and
Okay.
I got man of the match that game. Like it was a big moment. It was epic. Yeah. Um, but um, like if there's any sporting fans here, like listening to this, they're gonna absolutely hate what I'm about to say. But that stadium is sick, and
No, yeah, but
I mean,
they're not. They can hate all that. It's
yeah,
true.
it's true. It's a really nice
Yeah.
stadium, and I always felt considered a privilege whenever I would walk out to go warm up, and oh man, you just soak it all in. You just soak it all in because
Yeah. Yeah.
not every
Yeah.
game get to play in something like that.
No
And
facts.
on the sporting side, um, we got to play in our stadium once this year, and then once the year before. And again, I soaked that in as well. Like that was super cool. But the Benfica has more quantity of fans, and so when it's a packed out stadium, man, it is just really cool. And I think the rivalry is like super fun. It's definitely one of those games that brings the beast out, and I just thrive because that's why we do it. If we're not challenging ourselves, if we're not in an uncomfortable position, there's no point. And yeah, that was super fun. Um, that rivalry was super fun, and it was also funny because one of my best friends ended up playing for Benfica, and so like me and her like versus each other, and the first time we played against each other, we just kind of like side eyed and like kind of like laughed mid game. What is happening? Like
Yeah.
I've never been against you before. Yeah.
I want to give you the last word, but I wanted to ask just how good Marta is. By the way, that's why I forgot to ask, and like it and or that two-part question. So how good is Marta, but also who would you say are like the top players that you've been around, that you've seen, that you played with or against, that you're like, yeah, I haven't seen that. That's different.
Yeah, I mean, Marta, she's just so funny. Like her personality is just so fun and upbeat. And when she first came, I don't think,
She's like that all the time.
yeah, oh yeah.
Oh, dang.
And I don't
Okay.
think she spoke much English when she first came. So I didn't interact with her too much, and but she brought energy, and it was just fun to be around. And I think that's like something that's so special about her. But to be fair, I do think it's a kind of a Brazilian thing as well. Um, but yeah, and so I think that's a really special quality about her. And she was kind of injured a decent amount that first year. But when I was able to see her play, yeah, it's. I mean, thankfully, like we all have like very easy access to watch her play right now in the states, and so it's like everyone can just see. But she's just really clever. She's really clever. She has that like that talent, and yeah, I mean, there's a reason she's called the best. um,
Do you agree with that assessment?
yeah, totally. Yeah, like I have like nothing bad to say I think she was just, yeah, she's just different. Like,
Yeah.
and like, I mean, it was a long time ago that I played with her. I haven't watched the game in the States because the time changed to Europe. It's always like midnight at least, and I'm sleeping. Um, but from everything I can remember, like, it's not just the talent qualities that make her different, though. It's like the energy she brings to the game and just like the like passion that she brings to the game. That's why she's different, also. Um, yeah, and in terms of like other top players, I mean, I played with Alex Morgan in Orlando too, and um, I really liked being her teammate. She was really nice to me, being like young, and it was kind of an intimidating situation, and she was really nice to me. And I remember she like asked to do some like extra shooting, and sometimes we met up on off days, and she hits this like front post top corner shot that's just impossible. And I had never had anybody shoot there before. And so I remember doing the shooting drill with her, and she was hitting there. I was like, what am I supposed to do? Like, and so honestly, like every time I have someone shoot it there, I have a flashback to like training with her in Orlando. And so I really enjoyed playing with her, and I think she's a good person and a good player. Um, and then I'll throw one more person in there. Well, two more people that I played with in Portugal. So Claudia Neto and then Ana Borges. They're both Portuguese national team. Neto's retired from the national team now, but Borges is captain of the national team, and I played with her my entire time at Sporting, and they're just both top level. Um,
Yeah.
Neto is incredibly technical, and it's just really fun to see what she does with the ball. And I don't think you see that a ton. Just how she can keep the ball, but then also some of the passes she makes and sees. It's really like just fun to watch. And then Borge, there's just no one's getting past her, and it's just
Yeah.
I could always count on her as a defender, and it was really cool, kind of being up close and seeing her fight for the. She like fought to make Sporting a better place, and she fought to make that club special, and so it was just really cool to see the different ways that passion can kind of be manifested in somebody, and yeah, so I'll give all those women a shout out.
Oh, I love that. Well, Mumbi, unless you have anything else, I think Hannah, we want to say thank you so much, and we want to just give you the last word in terms of three things to leave the people with, and the people, by the people we mean especially the young players, the young boys and girls listening to this, thinking about what their potential football journey will be, what they hope it'll be. What do you want to leave them with?
mm, just let your story be your story. Do not get lost in comparing it to someone else's story, because your story is special, and the challenges that you will face will make you strong, in a way that you can't really imagine right now. And so, if this is a desire that you have, do it for you. Don't do it for mom and dad. Don't do it for image. Do it because you love it, and because it's just something you have fun to do. And I know that how cliche that sounds, but it's the truth. It's the truth.
You can't say it enough.
It,
You
you
can't say it
can't,
enough.
yeah. And yeah, just do it for like have your journey with like purity. Don't get sidetracked with all the like, extra nonsense. It's just you and the game. Um, I don't think I have like a list of things, but like I think that's like a good message that I think I'll just stick with that.
I love that. Mumbi?
Nope. That was brilliant from her. So thank you again, Hannah, for joining us. I'm definitely going to be watching to see how you do with Angel City. And hopefully I can catch a game when you guys come up to the Bay Area. That would be awesome to get to see you play against Bay FC. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I expect to see both you guys at the games in Seattle, also in Matanda.
No, well, dude, I was gonna say, hit me up, and we'll connect. Um, grab a bite, do something, hang out. Like I would look forward to that.
Awesome.
So let me know when you're in town,
Awesome.
and we'll make it
Yeah,
happen. And we'll have you on here again. So this is great. I told you in Portugal the same thing, and this is us following through. The best thing about this is that about this game is that we can connect with people and hear people's stories, and so I feel really blessed, and I can't thank you enough for coming on. And Mumbi, thanks as always. Um, Everybody, follow Hannah Seabert, Angel City FC's new goalkeeper. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us on the Impact Space podcast. We'll see you next time.
thanks, guys. Super fun.